Hello and welcome. This is going to be a lore reading. So let's see what we've learned since last time. Mabari Warhound. Learn this by killing them. Dogs are an essential part of Ferelden culture, and no dog is more prized than the Mabari. The breed is as old as myth, said to have been bred from the wolves who served Dane. Prized for their intelligence and loyalty, these dogs are more than mere weapons or status symbols. The hounds choose their masters and pair with them for life. To be the master of a Mabari anywhere in Ferelden is to be instantly recognized. He is a person of worth. Mabari are an essential part of the Ferelden military strategy. Trained hounds can easily pull knights from horseback or break lines of pikemen, and then the sight and sound of a wave of war dogs howling and snarling has been known to cause panic among even the most hardened infantry soldiers. I mean, maybe? I think you'd kind of need to have, in order to actually make like effective use of them, I think you probably need to have the their handlers, and the warriors, both the soldiers, like immediately behind them, not just like send them forward in a wave to attack. I mean, certainly, like even if they can't penetrate the armor, they might be able to like grab them and grab the enemy soldiers and like break up the formation, which would then allow the soldiers to come in and suddenly become a bigger threat than the dogs are, because imagine the dogs will probably have a little bit of a difficult time once. I mean, humans usually have like shorter range weapons which they can use on them. Geography of Thedas. Thedas is bounded to the east by the Amaranthine Ocean, to the west by the Tirashan Forest and the Hinterhorn Mountains, to the south by the snowy wastes that lie beyond the Orkney Mountains, and to the north by the Donok Forest. I thought there were also some like more ocean and islands to the north. The word Thedas is Tevinter in origin, originally used to refer to the land that bordered the Imperium. So, effectively, marches or borderlands. As the Imperium lost its stranglehold on conquered nations, more and more lands became Thedas, until finally people applied the name to the entire continent. The northern part of Thedas is divided amongst the Anderfels, the Tevinter Imperium, Antiva and Ravane, and the islands held by the Kunari off the coast. Central Thedas consists of the free marches, Navarra and Orlais, with Ferelden to the south. What lies behind the snowy waste is a mystery. The freezing temperatures and the barren land have kept even the most intrepid cartographers at bay. Similarly, the western reaches of the Anderfels have never been fully explored, even by the Anders themselves. We do not know if the dry steppes are shadowed by mountains, or to what extent, or if they extend all the way to a nameless sea. Imagine there's probably a geography answer to that. I suppose if there are steppes, that could explain why they don't get much rain unless they're just grasslands and dry. Though I think I remember there's some bits in Veilguard where you go to the Anderfels, and I think that section is quite wet, though I suppose it's not every section of a dry steppes is necessarily entirely dry. There must be other lands, continents, or islands, perhaps across the Amaranthine or north of Parvalon, for the Kunari arrived in Thedas from somewhere, but beyond that deduction we know nothing. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, Trials of a Chantry Scholar by Brother TV. Yeah, that is a thing. The fact that we don't really know what the rest of the world is like. I don't think was ever really a thing in history. I mean, most people probably didn't know what was going on past, like, their immediate area. But like travel was not unknown even in like prehistoric times. Um, and like trade networks have been in existence for probably almost as long as there have been humans living in various areas with different resources. So, I mean, it makes sense that, yeah, you might only know what's in the immediate area, but then go to the edge of that, the people there know what's in their immediate area and keep on going. Kind of curious how... Unless there's like large oceans in between places, they don't necessarily know, and even then, they might still know, because people can go across the oceans. Lore, alright. Velaslin, blood writing. After my encounter with the Dalish elves on the road to Navarra, I studied every book on the elves I could find. I sought out legends and myths and history and tried to make sense of it all, but there's only so much one can learn from books. I knew that in order to truly understand the Dalish, I would have to seek them out. A dreadful idea in hindsight. In my defense, I was young, and also inebriated when the idea popped into my head. Unfortunately, even after I'd regained some measure of sobriety, the idea still held appeal and proved remarkably resistant to my attempts to ignore it. I gave in after months of that nagging thought at the back of my head, and set out to learn about the Dalish firsthand. I tramped through the forest bordering Orlais for weeks, before I finally found, or was found by, a Dalish hunter. I stumbled into one of his traps, and suddenly was hanging from a tree with a rope around my ankles. There I was, defenseless, upside down, with my robe over my head and my underclothes on display. Descriptions of my predicament might elicit laughter these days, but trust me when I say that it was a situation I would not wish on anyone. Thankfully, my ridiculous appearance may have caused my captor to stay his hand. What threat is this silly human with his pants showing? I feel like that's using the British definition of pants, which to the American dialect is underpants. And so he sat, made a small fire, and began to skin a deer he had caught. As soon as I mustered the courage to speak, I tried to assure him that I was not there to harm him, but he laughed at this and replied that if I were there to harm him, I had failed terribly. Eventually I got to talking, and when I say talking, I meant asking him questions, and occasionally he would deign to answer. He told me that while some Dalish actually seek out human travelers to rob or frighten, most of his people would rather be left alone. He seemed to believe that punishing the humans for past actions only led to more violence. I fully believe this, because, I mean, people are people, and we've, like, understood that the consequences of violence, there can be more violence. I asked him about the intricate tattoos on his face. He told me they were called Velaslin, blood writing. His were symbols of Andril, the huntress, one of the most highly revered elven goddesses. He said the Dalish mark themselves to stand out from humans, and from those of their kin who have chosen to live under human rule. He said the Velaslin remind his people that they must never again surrender their beliefs. When he had finished skinning the deer, he cut me down. I actually don't think he would have cut someone down, because rope is fairly valuable. And admittedly, they wouldn't have used, like, every time they want to tie someone up, they wouldn't necessarily use rope. They might use, like, rags and that such, and that is less valuable. They might not bother with here untying that, but I believe they would have untied it. They were using, like, actual rope. But in general rule, as I understand, in like medieval and pre-medieval society, materials were expensive. Labor was relatively cheap, so if you can avoid breaking something that's potentially useful, you did. By the time I had righted myself and conquered the dizziness of all the blood rushing out of my head, he was gone. I do not recommend that my readers seek out the Dalish for themselves. I was very lucky to have met the man I did, and to have walked away from our meeting unscathed. Perhaps the Maker watches over those who seek knowledge with an open heart. I certainly would like to think so. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, Troubles of Chantry Scholar, by Brother China TV. Glitter Dust. I'm going to take a break to get some water. Glitter dust is the powdered form of rock found along the glittered coast. When explorers brought the sparkling rocks to the markets of the free marches, it became immediately popular among wealthy ladies who crushed it and applied the powder to their faces. The added brightness and luster to their skin, however, soon paled in comparison to the developing rash and coughing fits. Do you think that would have stopped them? So, lead was, like, white lead was used as face paint, as makeup, rather famously, and it's got a problem that it does terrible things to your skin. And the solution to that is often, okay, put on more of it. And, I mean, I can see them potentially, like, possibly producing face paint with it, or makeup, just to cover up the rash. As it turned out, glitterous is dangerous if ingested or inhaled. It's also extremely flammable, as several ladies discovered after powdering their hair while standing next to a candle. Actually, that might be a sunshine that can be an property of basically anything powdered. Lots of surface area means if it's at all combustible and you add a spark, the entire cloud can just go up, and I believe that's one form of low explosives. Like, people talk about high explosives, well, that would be a low explosive. The distinction is high explosives have their own accelerant in them, whereas low explosives do not. Unfortunately, this resulted in a dozen deaths by conflagration. These days, glitter dust is used sparingly, and only by experienced alchemists. The most common form of the substance is volatile glitter dust. If gathered from caves where darkspawn dwell, the rock produces a powder known as tainted glitter dust. That sounds healthy. Both of them sound really healthy. An excerpt from the Alchemist's Encyclopedia by Lord Sarasteyev Marnus Pell. I wonder if that's anything like our glitter. Could well be. Knight Captain Cullen. Knight Captain Cullen is one of the few Templars who survived the incident at the Circle of Magi in Ferelden. The possessed blood mage Uldred took over the tower, and in his madness he filled it with summoned demons and abominations. Cullen was imprisoned, tortured, and forced to watch the slaughter of his fellow Templars. The ordeal shook him, and he emerged from it convinced that even Templars fail to see how dangerous mages can be. After Cullen returned to his duties, it became clear that he would go to any lengths to enforce the Chantry's rule. His zeal troubled Knight Commander Gregor, who feared it unwise to let Cullen watch over the men and women he deemed responsible for his torment. Gregor sent Cullen to serve under Knight Commander Meredith in Kirkwall, and Meredith found Cullen's views of mages similar to her own. Of her company, only Cullen had seen mages' potentially terrifying power firsthand, and she believed he could influence the others Templars' views. Consequently, Cullen rose quickly through the ranks to become Knight Captain and Meredith's second in command. Alright, nothing else there. Letters and notes. Nothing. Notes. Grey Warden letters. Take the first boat from Amaranthine to Kirkwall, then proceed with all haste to Weishaupt Fortress. If I recall from the map of Thedas, there is a waterway straight from Amaranthine to Weishaupt. Admittedly, it does end up going through the waters between Tevinter and the Kunari, so, well, and also past Antiva, which I kind of associate with pirates. So that would be dangerous, though I suspect it might actually be quicker than going overland. Admittedly, overland would probably also be like, using whatever rivers you could. Because I've read how they traveled in like pre-modern times. Frequently, water travel was the quickest way to get from point A to point B, and they frequently had a very good idea of which waterways were navigable and by what kinds of ships, because it was just faster. And you might, like, travel up one river, do a little jaunt, went to the next river overland, and then do more river travel. If roads prove too perilous or blocked, our agent in Kirkwall can assist. Find the dead drop located in an alleyway near the Lowtown Foundries during daylight hours. Protect the letter at all costs. Knight Commander of Ferelden, or Warden Commander of Ferelden. Is that the hero of Ferelden? Good old Duran Adukin? Limitations put upon my research have greatly hampered progress. With just a few subjects, I could test certain critical hypotheses. However, the information sent about the architect has proved invaluable to my efforts, and I am pleased to report limited success. As the architect surmised, considerable untapped power exists within Grey Warden blood. When properly prepared, its effects can be remarkable. But my research has also revealed some alarming implications, which I have attached in the old Acanthen cipher. I urge you to send this letter to the First Warden at once. I will conduct further tests as long as I am able. My documentation is very thorough. If time finally claims me, others may follow in my footsteps. Avernus. Okay, so this is the consequence of leaving Avernus alive to do his research at Soldier's Peak. Interesting. And I believe that is all for this one. Thank you for watching. Do any relevant things with YouTube's buttons, and have a nice day.